gather here this night, and we've already begun, as is traditional for African people, to begin all things with the acknowledgement of our Creator, however we refer to the Creator. We, as an enlightened spiritual people, don't get crossed up with how we call it, just so we call it, because we know that's one thing Africans know if they don't know anything else. And I think the one thing that would be the worst curse that could ever occur to us, more than anything else, is to find ourselves separated from our Creator. Above all things, and our enemy knows that, and that's why he's given us false ideas about our Creator, because he knows that's the most precious thing in life to us. We want, to use their term, I don't like the term, but it's a convenient one, we want God in our lives, one way or the other, however we understand that. And therefore, the reason why we're like that, as we will be discussing tonight, is because the Creator, in the divine wisdom of the mother and father, the nature shows that the very first people that would represent the Creator on this earth, that would represent the glory and beauty of the Creator on this earth in human form, was African people. And for a long time there was nothing else but us. So is there any wonder why we feel that special connectedness? I also want to give honor and praise to our positive African ancestors, and especially those who put their life on the line or gave their lives for us, shed their blood for us. And they are worthy of all praise and all honor and all respect. And there's so many of them, we couldn't call them by name in here tonight, but I will say, as I traditionally say, in the words of the last poets, and some of you know that quite well, and that is, what? Blessed are those who struggle. Oppression is worse than the grave. It is better to live and die for a noble cause than to live and die a slave. So I want to, having given honor correctly and rightfully, I want to give thanks to the Brooklyn chapter of the Black African Holocaust Council. And my main man, all of the people who work with him, and especially my main man, Eric Muhammad. Eric Muhammad has such a good heart. He's truly one of the pure in heart. There's a text that says that David was a man after God's own heart. Even after all the mistakes that David made, and he certainly made a lot, but it was because of his heart that he was quick to repent for what he did, and he was quick to try to make restitution and to do that which was just. Eric Muhammad is definitely a man after God's own heart. His life is committed and dedicated to bringing forth knowledge and understanding that is useful to us as a people, not only survive, but to gain the victory and to win the war. And he keeps us ever aware of the fact that we are at war. You know, we don't like to think about that. We'd like to escape the reality that we're at war. And it is hard to live in constant warfare situation, but we are at war. And that does not mean that we shouldn't take time and be happy and balanced. When you see us working around here, you see us picking at each other like brothers hanging out on the corner. We show enough homies. But we are very serious about our work, but we take the time every chance we get to play a little. But there's a balance. Many times we want to play all the time. But there's a time to play, there's a time to work, there's a time to do it all. So I've always enjoyed being with this brother and in his presence. And we have so many wonderful, all of you in here are special people tonight. And there are those who are noted for that extra effort they have put forth in the movement. I can't call them all, but Barashango has to stand up because he's a living ancestor. I'm not embarrassing you or putting you on the spot, but you have to be given that honor and that respect. And I was always glad to see him. My man, one of the best, another good heart. You're talking about a good-hearted black man. This is one of them old Africans in heart and spirit. And he will give you, literally give you the shirt off his back, and that's Roy Canton. You all know Roy Canton in his work here. Please stand up, Roy. Every time somebody get in trouble, the first person there with help is Roy Canton. The first person to say, let's help. And he was one of the founders of the Africans Helping Africans. The moment, and I was the one that got in trouble. Look at it. Roy said, hold it, we're going to do something about this. And of course, one of our great living Kandakis. Kandaki means queen mother of the ancient Kushite empire. Kandaki and warrior queen. Such a warrior, sometimes the brothers have to gather around her and hold her hand still because she slings the sword everywhere. She has a double two-edged sword, a big one, and she carries it tough. And it's also as much of a warrior as she is, and she is that kind of warrior because she's so full of love. She has an overwhelming abundance of love, mother love for her people. And any threat to her people ignites her and incenses her and sends her to war instantly. And that's Sister Zaire. Please stand up. The great river, Sister Zaire. So I'm just thankful to be able to stand before you in the midst of such greatness and to be able to walk the planet and breathe the same air that they breathe at the same time. So it's a great joy indeed. How y'all doing tonight? Thank you for your patience. You know, no matter how hard we try to do things all the time, it always turns out to be African time. It ain't CB time, it's African time. And African time is, it don't happen till all the elements are there. That's how we deal with things. So obviously all the elements are there, and we're going to do it tonight. Before getting into the topic tonight, I want to mention several things that I have to mention to you just briefly. And one is, on this topic tonight, Giant Footsteps in the Sands of Time. It is actually a 12-hour course. Now, no, I'm not going to, don't leave me. I'm not going to try to do the whole 12 hours tonight. Actually, it's supposed to be done in 4-hour segments. I'm not going to try to do 4 hours tonight. I'm going to go as far as we can go with the slides that we do have and try to feel the spirit and feel you and know when it's time to stop. I don't want to wear you out there because, you know, we can go on ad infinitum, you know. We are trying to, us old warrior scholars are trying to get out as much information as we can because we don't know when they're going to call our number. So please take that under consideration. So don't they ever stop. You know, you see Dr. Clark sometimes, he'll sit down, and I have seen him doze with his head on the table. And the moment you call his name, he get up and start calling the names, dates, places, what happened, what went down, everything, and can do it for 3-4 hours. Sit down and fall right back to sleep. But that shows you what kind of dedication and commitment that is. I pray that I live that long to be able to do it that way. But I am honored to have been able to study with men like him and Dr. Ben and Dr. Scobie, who recently crossed over to the ancestors, and Dr. Lord Mackey and others. It's just been a wonderful experience to be able to come in contact with these kinds of people. No, he didn't cross over. He's with us. Dr. Scobie crossed over a little while ago. No, Dr. Mackey's still here. And still here messing with everybody, I'm sure. You know, and that's how he shows you he loves you. If he don't mess with you, he don't care nothing about you. If he's messing with you, then you're all right. The topic that we're covering tonight, we're going to try to cover from 15 million years before the present, and we'll try to get to the Kushite Empire. I don't know if we'll make it that far, but I know we'll get pretty far. You can find it in the tapes. Much of the material I'm dealing with tonight is in the tapes. Portrait of the Eternal People, which covers the history of African people from 2 million years ago up until 1492, quoting from many of the African-centered warrior scholars there. I will be doing a lot of reference. As you well know, one of my favorite topics, and my wife can tell you that, is the black woman. I am a worshiper of the black woman and her powers, the special power that she possesses, and I love to tap into that power. That power. And on that tape, Black Woman, Queen, Mother of the Universe, you will find much of the material that I'm dealing with here tonight. From the anthropological, that is the study of ancient man point of view, called the scientific point of view, the theory of evolution, you will find on the tape the African origin of the human race. And from the biblical, or the theory of creationism, the biblical frame of reference, you will find on the tape in the beginning was the black race, where I give an African-centered overview of the Genesis story. Also, there are others. I have 4 new tapes out now. One is the life and times of a black revolutionary called Jesus, how to find the true history of the black man in the Bible, and the word man is used generically, sisters, there. We didn't leave out the sister. That's a generic term there, as you know me. The African Origin of the Bible, Volume 1, and the great African warriors in the Bible. You always talk about that turn the other cheek stuff, but you need to go back in the Bible and check the violence out in there. It's more violent than what's that, Star Wars. And in Star Wars, none of them got anything on that Old Testament back there. So, and in the New Testament too, you'll be surprised at some of the instruction that Jesus gave his disciples in terms of self-defense. So you will find that in there. So, brothers and sisters, having said that, and also I want to thank you for every time that you purchase one of our tapes or one of our books. because it is only that way that we're able to carry this work on. That is the only way that it's financed, and we really appreciate it. Every time you spend money on this kind of material, it goes a long ways. Actually, you're not spending money, you're investing money, because it does go a long ways. And you know, I don't have to tell you how African-centered scholars have to struggle along, and Negroes with the money don't come to their support. But we're not going to cry that song anymore. We really don't need them. All we need is the people. And as long as we serve the people in turn will bless us. So you know I have my special signing pen with me tonight, the one that has been blessed by a Yoruba priest and a Khan priestess and an African-centered Christian minister. African-centered Christian minister and African-centered Muslim and African-centered Buddhist. And then I took it out in the woods by the water with the squirrels and the birds and prayed over to make sure that it was covered. So it's a powerful pen, and I'm signing all tapes tonight when you come to the table. So I look forward to seeing you there. Let's get on into the topic. Now, what I was going to try to do is to do some reading as I go along with this, but we don't have any light for me here, so I'm going to have to work from the top of my head. So I'm going to be tested tonight. I didn't know I was going to be tested. I'm going to find out if I really know something up in here tonight as we go to say, you've been hearing about this. Let's see if Ishakamusa really knows something, and if he knows what he's talking about. So some of my references I hope I'll be able to look at, but if not, I will quote them to you, and we will go from there. Let us begin. Are you ready? Camera, lights, action. We have to put out all the lights. Now, who's going to operate? You're going to operate. All right, Brother Rennie, he's doing two things at one time. That's a bad brother there. We will begin with our first exhibit, but first we have to turn out all lights so that we can get a clear picture here. And this exhibit is entitled, Behold, the Only Thing Greater Than Yourself. Now, we are familiar with this, and we know it comes from the mini-series Roots. But I thought it was very apropos to use in this introduction to Giant Footsteps in the Sands of Time, because I believe that the one thing that African people, among many, must understand, that there is no human on this earth greater than you. What did I say? No human. I don't care what they know. I don't care what their position is. I don't care what kind of power they have. I don't care what they possess. There is none greater than you. There is only one thing greater than yourself, and that is the creative force and energy in the universe. And in essence, its greatness is a part of you because it's born in every one of us. We are a part of and an extension of the whole entire universe. And when we see ourselves in the context of being a part of the total whole, then we realize that we are limitless in the power that we can possess, even as individuals. In our very brains itself, in our very minds, the brain mechanism consists of 10 to 20 billion brain cells. I want you to just say that a minute. How many? 10 to 20 billion. Billion. That's a whole lot. Hard for some of us to imagine what a billion is like. But 10 to 20 billion brain cells is what we have. Each one of those brain cells is capable of receiving knowledge, recording knowledge, storing knowledge, recalling knowledge, and transmitting knowledge. That's a powerful, powerful thing. Well, Brother Shaka, why are you making a big deal about this? White folks have this too, not in the way that Africans have it. How can I say that? I know you're going to get upset when you're saying you're being racist. They lack that element, that magic elixir, which we'll be talking about later, that magic elixir known as what? Which is the regulating form of the thought power. No people since us have been able to accomplish what our people accomplished in the ancient world. The world has been in limbo. In spite of the computer age, in spite of all of that, none of it has ever been able to duplicate the technology that was in harmony with nature created by the ancient Africans. So the ancient African possessed something and still possesses something once we are released. And the first step to that release is a spiritual release. Then we can bring about the physical release. And in getting that spiritual release, we must realize there is only one thing greater than yourself. That is your Creator that created you, and to get directly in touch with that Creator. To get in touch with that creative force within you. For the power and divine energy that created everything is born in each and every one of us that comes to this earth. And Africans have it in a very special and unique way. Because, as we will find out, Africans were the first here, therefore they have a special and unique relationship with the Creator. You may want to question me or remark on that later. Let's move on to the next exhibit, please. This exhibit is entitled, I have some nice names for these things, but let's see if I can see them. Mother Africa, the heartbeat of planet Earth. Now, when you look on any map, you can see that Europe fits down to Mother Alkebulan, which is the oldest name we have for what is misnomer Africa. We see that Arabia fits it. When we look over at the American continent, as it is called, we see it fits around here. We see that all of the land mass was once joined together. About 250 million years ago, it was all together. And at the heart and center of it was what was to become, and is still now, the richest mineral continent on Earth. It not only had the richest minerals, but it also had enough food to sustain the whole entire world before invaders came and redirected the energies and caused deserts and other things to well up there, and swamps and things of that nature. We had a true paradise there. And that in that paradise is where humanity began. Before the Creator brought about humanity, it was made certain that what would be needed to sustain everybody on the planet that would be born on this planet would be found in Mother Africa. And as long as Mother Africa was undisturbed by demonic forces, she was able to do that in her, and we find that in her ancient history there. The heartbeat. Now, there are two theories about the development of humanity, and both of them, as Joel A. Rogers tells us, both science and the Bible agree that man began in the tropics. And he also goes on to say the tropical man, oh, please don't close that. I need that light. Oh, yeah, and you can open the other one, too, because I need that light, please. And the air, we all need. Now, that tropical man is never white. He's always black, brown, frizzy hair, broad nose, protruding jaws, particular Africoid, the beautiful Africoid features. Yes, good, that helps a lot there. The theory, there are two theories, basic theories about the origin of humanity. One is called the theory of creationism. That's the one we're most familiar with. What is the theory of creationism? The theory of creationism says that human beings were either made by the voice of, or the hand of, or some direct creative mechanism of a divine deity. Call it God, the Creator, whatever you wish. But there are many stories. You can find it in the Quran, you can find it in the Bible, you can find it in many of the ancient books. There's so many stories of the Creator directly creating human beings at a given moment and time in space on this earth. That's called the theory of creationism. The one most known to us is in the book of Genesis, or the stories most known to us, because in the book of Genesis there's two different stories in there at least. Now, which I go over in that tape in the beginning, was the black race. Now, the other theory, and I'm calling it a theory. Please do not get upset with me. I'm speaking as a scientist tonight, not as a theologian. I'm calling it a theory because it's based on belief. And belief is not something you can prove. In fact, I don't even debate it with anybody because it's personal. You have no concrete evidence for it other than that you believe it. All right, and that there's no basis to debate there. But it's a theory. The other theory, a theory is that which cannot be proven. But it sounds probable, it could possibly be, but you cannot completely prove it. It's not what is called natural science. Natural science is based on natural law, something that you can prove, that's concrete. The theory of evolution, that's a theory too. They keep calling it science, but it's not science. Even though you use deductive reasoning in dealing with it, you use a scientific methodology in dealing with it and measuring time and space of the artifacts and the bones that have been found, it is still theoretical in its content. The theory of evolution says that humanity began in a lower form and gradually moved up into the higher form of what we know as human beings today. So you have those two basic theories. And what Joel A. Rogers says is that they both agree on this. Although they have many points in which they disagree, they both agree that the first human beings came out of the tropics and were therefore, being indigenous to the tropics and being tropical, were black people. That's a reality there. Even when you go into the story of Adam, the word Adam is from Adumah, the Akkadian word which means mud man, or man of the black clay, man of the black dirt, the black soil, is exactly what the name means. The next exhibit, please. Y'all still with me? Yes. This one is called Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, Baby. This is an artist's conception of the theory of creationism, the story of Adam and Eve, which is actually a duplicate of the story of Hadama and Hava and Kulukulu and Kulukula out of the southern portion of Arkebu land, and a whole lot of other stories which I described in the book I did, African Genesis, Amazing Stories of Man's Beginning. But the reason why I put this here is because we are not accustomed to thinking of, even in the theory of creationism, Adam and Eve as being Africans or Africoid or being in a tropical land. The very word Eden, Edenu, meaning pleasant place, and it talks about in the 2nd chapter of the book of Genesis that there was a great river, and that 4 rivers ran out of that river, and one of those rivers was called the river Gihon, which was the Hebrew for saying the Nile or Happy River. And that one was the Indus River, and that then the other was the Euphrates and the Tigris River, and which shows, again, it illustrates that even in the Genesis record, it's mentioning a time when all of the earth's land mass was once joined together. So here we put them with tropical animals and beautiful Africoid and tropical features there. As a matter of fact, when I was in the seminary, they said that Adam was about 13 to 15 feet tall, and Eve was about 11 to 13 feet tall. So they were some big, beautiful people there. Now let's go to the next one. And this is called a fine, healthy hunk of a man. What is this? Somebody at first looking at it will say, oh, well, that looks like an ape to me. Well, this kind of individual, this kind of person, as it was, existed between 14 million and 10 million years before the present. What happened was this. There was about 25 million years ago, the mother continent, the center of the earth, Arkebu land, began to drift north, and it hit with the European continent. And when it hit, the continents are constantly shifting. That is called the shifting of tectonic plates, tectonic plate action. It's constantly going on. The earth is in motion always. Every year, about an inch or so of each continent moves in a particular direction. One day, millions of years from now, it will probably all join together again. But the continent of Arkebu land, Misnamet Africa, drifted north, and when it bumped with Europe, it caused a change in the climatic conditions. At the time, there was a great belt of forest all around the earth. We have been able to find evidence of that in archaeology, in digging up things. There was a whole belt of forest covering the globe. And therefore, there was a great proliferation of what is called anthropoids. An anthropoid is a man-like ape, very close to human beings, very close in characteristics to humans. Now, don't get upset with that. Do you know that 97% of the genetic makeup of a chimpanzee is the same as yours and mine? And that 95% of the genetic makeup of a gorilla is the same as yours and mine? No wonder our children act like park apes sometimes. And I've always identified with Brother Gorilla. I think he's one of the finest and the noblest creatures there is. Now, even in dealing with the theory of evolution, which we will be dealing with quite a bit here, you've heard me talk on the theory of creationism or the biblical aspect of it, and certainly I cover it in many of the tapes. Today we're going to approach what they call the scientific aspect, the theory of evolution. Don't be afraid to approach it. You don't have to believe in it, you don't have to accept it. But at least in approaching it, you can approach it from an African-centered frame of reference. And then you can take the material and do what you want with it once you get it. But there are many topics that black people are afraid to deal with, that white people deal with all the time and bounce back and forth. And especially, I'm writing the book now, The Real Jesus Was a Black Man, and bringing up some realities about the contradictions in the New Testament that black theologians are scared to death to deal with. White theologians discuss it all the time. So we have a right to discuss this subject and to approach it from an African-centered frame of reference. And we're going to deal with it. Now, when that happened, there were about 35 to 40 different species of anthropoids. But when that climatic shift took place and the continent began to drift south again, much of the forest belt dried up. And it was now put in what was called the heartland of Africa, in the center of Africa and around the equator there. So the anthropoid population began to die out. And there was only a few left. And out of the ones that were left, most all of them at that time were what was called arboreal creatures. What is arboreal creatures? Those who live in trees. Those who move back and forth in trees. And they stayed primarily in the trees because you had these big old rhinoceri and saber-toothed lions and tigers that existed at that time that were very dangerous to these creatures. But in those trees, as the forest began to shrink up, they had problems. They had what was called overpopulation problems. They began to fight for space. They began to fight for food. And out of all of the anthropoids, there was one particular anthropoid that got tired of the struggle and decided to venture out of the forest and go out into the savannas, or the high grass of Africa. Now, this was a very dangerous move. It was very hazardous there, but he had to make a living. And he would go out in the savannas, get him some food, and all those other animals and things would be chasing him, and he'd run back in the forest. After a while, as he did this, it was very difficult on all fours to do this because he had to try to carry his food. Sometime between 10 million and 4 million years before the present, he began to walk. He began to become what is called bipedal. That is, walk with 2 feet. So he could fight with these 2 hands with a stick if he needed to and carry his food back. So this creature, who was about, he weighed about 30, 40 pounds, about 3.5 feet high, was a very strong and very robust creature. He was the first step, according to in the study of anthropology, and it's paleoanthropology, that's ancient study, a study of ancient man. He was the first creature then that began to give life to what would be known as the human species. He is called a proto-hominid. Hominid is a term which means that, which includes within it man, which we are, human beings now, and apes related to human beings, human-like apes. They are in that family. That is called a hominid. He was a proto-hominid. He was the stage just before the group of hominids that began to develop into what would be called human beings. Y'all still with me? Yeah. All right, now some of these terms might, if they don't stick with you, I got them on the tape, and I want you to, we feel, African-centered scholars believe that everybody should have knowledge. That you don't necessarily have to go to a college campus to get knowledge. You don't want to. Some of us didn't have the advantage of doing that, and some of us did. And those of us who did have to bring it back to those who didn't. But that you have the right to entertain this knowledge and to sort this knowledge out. Don't let these terminologies that they come up with disturb you. I will do everything that I can to make those terminologies living and real to us. So we owe a lot to this brother. Once he got up on his 2 feet and started walking, he never looked back. He kept on progressing until we became human beings. So we owe a lot to him, and we call him Kenya Pathekis, which I will deal with in a moment. Next exhibit, please.